Hi, everybody. So welcome again. Again, thank you everyone for being here. We're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Caro Scott, and I'm the library manager here at the Sims Library of Poetry. We are the first and I believe the only poetry library on the West Coast. And we have over 7,000, or we have almost 7,000 books of poetry here on the shelves all around you. And that's a really great because like you go to a bookstore sometimes and it's like the poetry section is so tiny and very limited, and it's not a lot of like local poets here. We have a lot of local poets have come and like donated their books here, which I think is very special because some of the books you really just can't find anywhere else. So we're a very special place, and we're really glad that you're all here with us today. We're very new. We're almost approaching our very first year anniversary in July, so that's super exciting. We've grown a lot since we've opened, and it's really exciting. And we're part of a larger group organization called the Community Literature Initiative, and the Community Literature Initiative offers poetry publishing classes for folks to put together manuscripts and poetry manuscripts for publication. Um, and that's how the library started, because the our Hiram Sims, who founded and is the executive director of the Sims Library of Poetry and of Community Literature Initiative, saw that his students were having a hard time finding poetry books, and so he started bringing his own books in a suitcase to class. And someone was like, "Oh, it's like the Sims Library of Poetry." And from there, it was just a small collection, it was like 80 books, and from there the idea was just born in his head, and he was like, we should have a library of poetry. So he actually opened it up in his garage. I mean, it was in his garage for a while, and then in 2020, when the pandemic happened, this used to be a childcare center that was owned by his wife, and so they decided to switch it up and turn it into a library. And here we are. And so we went books in a suitcase to an entire room filled with almost 7,000 books, which is very amazing. Yes, thank you. And then I just also want to thank everybody who pay the admission to get in, because we are very much supported by the community, people who donate monthly to the library, and that is how we're able to like pay the rent, pay the bills, and pay the staff to continue to make things happen. So we appreciate you for being here, and for not only for being part of the community, but also for helping us monetarily fund the library. So and again, we're gonna go ahead and do the featured poets first, and then after that, we're gonna take a small intermission where there's gonna be some pizza, and then we're gonna come back for the open mic, and the open mic sign up is in the front. So I think we're gonna go ahead and get started with some poetry, because y'all ready to hear some poetry? Woo! Okay, cool. So we're gonna bring up our very first poet, Teresa Mei Chuc, who I heard her. I went to one of her readings just last. I think it was like last month or the month before that. All the months are blurring in my head. And yeah, her poetry is so powerful when she talks about her experiences. In Vietnam and coming here, and and it's just I loved hearing her story, and I'm so happy that she's here to share more of her poetry with us. I'm gonna just read her bio really quick. Teresa Mei Chuc was born in Saigon, Vietnam, and immigrated to the U.S. as a refugee with her mother and brother shortly after the American War in Vietnam. While her father, who had served in the army of the Republic of Vietnam, maintained in a Viet Cong reeducation prison camp for 9 years. Poet Laureate Emerita of Altadena, California, editor in chief 2018 2020, and a member of the Pasadena Rose Poets, Teresa Mei Chuc is the author of three collections of poetry: Red Thread, Keeper of the Winds, and Invisible Light. Her new poetry chapbook, You Fire, is forthcoming from Hummingbird Press. Teresa teaches literature and writing at a public high school in Los Angeles. So let's give a big warm welcome to Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caro. Thank you to everyone for being here. This is my first AAPI poetry event, so it means a lot to me. A lot of the poems that I'll be reading are based on true stories. I grew up watching movies like Rambo, Apocalypse Now, and realizing that our stories aren't represented in those movies. And I was very confused about what happened to my family and other Vietnamese boat refugees. So when my aunts and uncles started passing away, I realized that it's important for us to document our stories so that they can live on and people will know what happened with us. My first poem is about when my mom was pregnant with me in Saigon. The bomb shelter. When bombs are exploding outside, it means that there are implosions. Vibrations travel through air and liquid. My amniotic fluid is imprinted with airplanes dropping bombs and screams and fire. In the bomb shelter in Saigon, my father teaches my 2-year-old brother French. Je m'appelle Chuc Nai Dut. Je m'appelle. Immigration. It is October when the winds of autumn blow strong in the Pacific. There are over 2,000 of us, sardines, barely human and starving. We sleep on the floor and wash ourselves with seawater. People are sick. When someone dies from sickness, she or he is wrapped in a blanket and tossed overboard during a Buddhist chant. I was only 2 years old and cannot recollect the dying next to me, nor can I recollect my constant coughing, nor can I recall seeing my mother's worried countenance as she contemplated our future, how my constant crying made her want to jump overboard. We spent 3.5 months in the South China Sea on a freight boat. Cockroaches. A proposal by someone to my mom after the Vietnam War. Why don't you sell your baby? You don't have anything to eat. A response by my 4-year-old brother. No, don't sell my sister. There are lots of cockroaches for us to eat. When I returned to the country 18 years later, I saw them, large, brown, shiny tanks on the wall, evidence of my brother's love for me. This poem is about the first time I saw my father when I was 9 years old, because when he reported to re-education after the war, my mom was pregnant with me. When I first saw Daddy, he was like an Egyptian cat, skinny, foraging, and stern, just released from a Viet Cong prison. He told us he hated the color red. 16 years later, he wears a red sweatshirt and smiles, the pin tip opening in his heart enough to let in a driblet of red. This poem is dedicated to my late grandmother, my paternal grandmother, the only one that I grew up with. Grandma, a hologram. In your physical absence, the hologram of me still contains you. Like a cut leaf, you are part of the light scattered from me, so that even a tiny fragment, an eyelash, still contains the whole of you. This poem I wrote for my son. Photosynthesis. How can I convince you that you do have chlorophyll, that you can take the sun's energy and turn it into sugar, produce something sweet inside of you, take the waste people breathe out and make it into something that will keep you alive, that will keep those around you alive, create oxygen. Why do you say that this metaphor doesn't work? That you don't have the powers of a plant, that nature didn't intend you that way. Look how you twist and turn towards the light. This poem is about the war in Afghanistan. Depleted uranium. The water runs a neon color in the village. All the villagers know why the babies are born dead and deformed. Others say there's no proof it was the war. Sometimes truth can only be understood. The father carries the little body wrapped in a blanket. She will be buried with a wooden grave marker, her name inscribed with a knife. There are coffins that are only 6 inches long. If you place your hand inside, it will fit. This poem is about my name. Accents. Today, I decided to write with brush and ink my name in Vietnamese, Chuc Mi Tuệ, the one on my birth certificate with all of its beautiful accents, lightning above the U, ocean wave above the Y, mountaintop above, and reflection of moon below the E. Today, I made 4 small marks and took back my native language. So during the American War in Vietnam, not only were the people affected, but the the rainforests and the plants and the animals. And oftentimes we don't really talk about that, the impact of the natural world due to war. The decade the rainforest died, the deer did not stop running. Leopards climbed into trees that could not hide them. The Duglanker and the white-cheeked gibbon cursed at the metal gods we flew, raining on them as they burned from napalm. Elephants choked on the smoke of gunpowder and poison, their steps a strange rhythm as they tried to fly. The thunder of bombs echoed the steps of elephants. Tigers exploded as they stepped onto landmines. In a forest covered with leaves, dead from Agent Orange, fallen trees, and decomposing bodies of animals and people, the earthworms were washed away in monsoons with soil that could no longer grab onto roots. The Javan rhinoceros and the wild water buffaloes that were still alive wandered aimlessly. Weary with M16s and AK 47s, we marched quietly and steadily, not knowing why we were killing each other. So after the war in Vietnam, there were still a lot of unexploded landmines left behind. During the Vietnam War, there were so many landmines and bombs dropped over Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. I think the most ever. Um, and how here we have earthquake drills for kids in Vietnam. To this day, the kids learn how to identify unexploded landmines, UXO, and what to do. So this poem is about groups of people who go and find the unexploded landmines and detonate them so that kids and farmers don't step onto them and explode. The gambler. The metal rod she holds is her wand, the deck, more than 52 cards. Her suits, bombs used on both sides of the war. She walks in the wild fields seeking the invisible, bringing it to the surface in a strange beauty of smoke and explosion. The wager is her life or limb, the shovel, a tongue that lifts the crumbling earth to reach an unexploded landmine. She spreads out the dirt beneath her hands like cards. And there are groups of women who they have families too. And it really moved me to know that they're risking their lives. I took nothing and broke it in half. As if mocking me, there was an even greater nothing, and I felt myself falling. I took my falling and broke it in half. It did not stop the falling. I plunged deeper. I took this depth and gathered it, the darkness with all of its stars, and put it in the wings of a bat. I watched it retreat into the deepest of caves where it screams and listens to its voice returning from stone walls. So I think a lot of people are familiar with Agent Orange. Um, the US actually used a rainbow of herbicides. The poem I'm going to read is about Agent Blue. And what Agent Blue did was it tried to destroy the food supply of the Vietnamese people because the US military knew that in order to win the war, one huge way was to eliminate the food supply, and our main food supply is rice. Agent Blue. To kill correctly takes calculation down to a science. Arsenic, cacodyllic acid, no water and rice on a cellular level. Make sure no surviving seed can be collected and planted because even a small seed assures survival because mortars, grenades, and bombs cannot destroy a grain because our heart is made of seeds. Know what it takes to kill the seeds. Know what it takes to deprive the plant of water, to dehydrate it, to be surrounded by love, but unable to absorb it. This poem is called Chernobyl Necklace. It's about the nuclear fallout uh, during the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. People in the area who were affected developed thyroid cancer and they had to have their thyroids removed. And so there would be a scar around their necks. And it was known as the Chernobyl necklace. Chernobyl necklace. The scar is a pink horizon, sunset at the ocean, Each tree still standing in the red forest carries the story in its rings. Blind birds sing, calling to their mates. Broken glass, a plastic doll, the inanimate survive. How many more Aprils will that day be remembered? On my body grow mushrooms that could kill. Out of my heart runs a six-legged deer. These next two poems that I'm going to read are closer to home. They're dedicated to the people experiencing houselessness in our city. Today, someone died on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. Someone was stabbed on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. Someone was shot on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. A mentally ill person was dropped off on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. Someone was raped on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. Someone was starving on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. Someone was being trafficked on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. Someone was high on meth on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. The street was lined with disabled people on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. Today, a child was homeless on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. We let people die on Skid Row, and it will not be on the news. This poem is dedicated to our mothers, grandmothers, sisters, and daughters experiencing houselessness. Spring poem. Flowers are blooming, and so are the bruises on her face, purple and pink like showy penstemon, and there is nowhere she could go. The bruises on her arm, the deep violet of prickly pear fruits, tender to the touch. The flowers are blooming around her tent on the hillside overlooking the freeway, sunflowers, each branch carrying light. The robins, mockingbirds, and blue jays are singing as his fist punches her. The flowers are blooming, fuchsia red, fairy duster red on her skin, and there is nowhere she could go. I'm going to read one more poem. In praise of emptiness, I am looking for what's not there, that space we look through, the curve of a bowl, a window, blankness on paper, the smooth white between words, between lines, what is not said, what is not done, the hollow in a bird's bones. When someone looks at my palms, it's as if I'm holding nothing but the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for your beautiful and very powerful poetry and for sharing your story with us. Like it's a story that like needs to be heard, and I appreciate you for telling it. So thank you. Let's give it up for Teresa one more time. Um, and so the next poet that I'm gonna bring up is someone that I met just I think it was like a month ago or so at another poetry it was a book release actually, and then I was excited to invite her for this show tonight, and I believe she's coming all the way from Orange County. So thank you for traveling to be. I was like looking for you. I was like, you're right in front of me. So yeah, so thank you for joining us all the way from Orange County. I'm gonna go ahead and read Ellen's bio before bringing her up. Ellen Weber is a biracial Taiwanese American poet born in Hong Kong and raised in California. She's currently acting as a social media marketing specialist and videographer for Moontide Press, as a co co-host of Two Idiots Peddling Poetry, and is an editor of Freeze Ray magazine. Ellen's debut book, A Burning Lake of Paper Suns, was released in October 2021 with Moontide Press. Her poem, Metaphors for My Body in Midwinter, has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize 2021. Ellen's other poems have most recently been published in Freeze Ray Press, Shit Men Say to Me anthology in response to toxic masculinity, Dark Ink, horror anthology, and voicemail poems. And then just as a note too, everyone's books are going to be on the back table. So after during an intermission, if you liked any one of the poets' work, please support them by getting their books. So let's everyone give a warm welcome to Ellen.
Thank you so much for having me. This is also my first AAPI show, so it is such an honor. I have my first book published. It was published last year, so happy to read out of it. I grew up here, but I was raised by my single mom who came from Taiwan. So grew up with those influences of Asian culture, but was still separated from community in many ways. So it's interesting to hear that wonderful history lesson, but I also feel like I have some disconnect with my own heritage as well. But the threads of my culture do run through this book also, which is mainly a book of love poems. I'm starting to read from this one. Almond Blossom. I've spent 1,000 years picking myself out of the middle of nowhere, on an empty highway, clutching fistfuls of fireflies to my eyes, clawing poppy blossoms across a belly full of rabbits. I dripped with peppercorns. I salted the earth as if that would make the mud easier to swallow. I buried creatures with a pocket watch and a dead fish, and mounds rose up the hills of my body. A congregation of sparrows sang like nightingales as if that would bring me peace. My ghost is mad Ophelia babbling in swamp flower, poltergeisting the highways and waiting for the next thud of wooden dolls, slapped out of my hands, brings me walnut shells to curl into like that could keep me safe from waking up again. In the cheekbone curve of a boy who does not know the difference between a raven and a writing desk. Between, I'm sorry, and have some wild almonds, love. I picked these myself. You'll have to kiss me to taste them. This next poem starts with an epigraph. It is called Don't Look Down. You head toward a life you won't be living, by Kim Hye-soon. The hand in your hand is already a ghost. What you don't know keeps you running on air after the cliff gives way. Confession. There is truth that will keep you and your joy in the same sky. The ghost in your hand is flickering, begging, drowning. Do you know your joy is crying, is overwhelmed? Your joy is taking off his face. Don't look down. He is still behind you, but you do not see him. He is waving goodbye, but you do not turn. You hold your hands and head toward a life you won't be living because all you believe in is an indigo night of a future you will never get to hold. Because your muscles are made of prayer and gravity knows your worth. An omen of Damascus steel, after Brendan Constantine. It starts with an unfinished blade, hilt set with emerald and citrine. It makes a claim on the celestial. On the broken petaled tulip one lover offers another, it mentions something about an irreversible choice. The joyous collision of a girl and an oncoming train. Both singing an owl song into red water, but as the dusk falls, it captures the reflection of uncertainty. Perched in the shrubbery, a heart, a target, murmuring secret doubts. So, a lot of these poems deal with the heartbreak, the death that comes with love in the end. Fruit of the buried. Neither a mouthful of coins nor a sea of elegies will pay passage from the dark. Unstitch your wired lips and let them spill onto the floor of the cathedrals crumbling in your heart. Soon you will meet the threshold of all you've stolen your very life. A burgundy pitch staircase carved of spruce and bone. Don't look back. Do not look back. Shed your silks and silver talismans. Shed the blood clot songs of your bursting body. Now you are free, and it is in your eyes where black figs bloom. It is in your tears where wasps are born in splendor and abyss. Take my hand. Let me taste with fiery tongue the anointed skin and pulp of your sweetness. This feast, as endless as absence, this feast, my blessed devouring. I know how it feels to be big after Jeremy Ra. Wheezing through a carapace I've punctured with a corkscrew to make my lungs collapse faster. Everything is excess. It is boring to wave these hands of gold at every stranger who lights a cigarette on the gas stove of my belly. I want to be dormant, cold, abalone, but there are so many oceans sloshing between my ears, too many surfers cresting its ink and saliva only to drown at the base of my throat. Clog up the drain so that I am doubly speechless, stuffed to the gills with coins people slop through my lips as if I could grant wishes or spit money. I'd rather be a wolf, a flounder, someone no one would bother with if they had the choice, but they always do. It kills me to be this famous, catering to the rabble, too discontented to luxuriate in the drought they build of my body. Field notes on the body. 1. I wear this painted skin like a nightgown. In a flattened plain, I hear its billowing, its flaking into stars. Sometimes I hear my shoulders whisper about the way my body denies itself, struggles me out of my own tendons in uncaring ruptures of skin so that only a skeleton stands stilted beside it. 2. I dreamed of cutting myself open once, my belly distending with handprints and a grieving mouth as I used kitchen scissors and tender saints spilled out in teams of trout, gasping for a new deprivation, writing the great wrongs of mercy. 3. I don't know what to value. My blighted eyes, my close-mouthed mornings full of spit and the scent of cinders. Who could delight in this bloating furnace, this addict of ritual touch? Just us and the void. The dark tasted like rice wine, like ghost fire. It's us. Echoes of bronze and steel, the distant laughter of the boneyard, beneath a butcher's boots. We are a pair of lamentations. We are beyond all questions, spineless with our boundaries. How empty you cry. And yes, it is a hushed impossibility that we should ever find the shape with which to hold each other's hands again. Old sorrows. Call me blood of your blood. Pour yourself through me like plum wine. Let me be the black ink of your calligraphy. Let me crown to the toe with the sutra of our names. Battlefield scythe upon the wheat. Pearl on a dragon's tongue. Let your breath fill the hollow of my bamboo flute body. Caress your fingertips in flight. We shall outsing the brown nightingale, the immortal cicada, and hungry ghost cry of your house. Burn the incense. Trace my inscription on the stone. My pulse thrums the red strings in your hand. Know then that my liver is unwell. My riverboat glides across a celestial menagerie. My breath, my bones, I miss you. How much time? 2? Okay. Sure. All right. This next one is inspired by my relationship to the Buddhism I grew up in. I've since stepped away from it somewhat after getting out of the house and seeing more of the world. Agnostic poem after Brendan Constantine. I've made it a habit not to ask directly in prayer, with incense stick prostration, with pomelos and tangerines on the altar. If I whisper into the green light in the steps of an escalator, what questions of mine can be heard by the Emperor of Heaven? My knowledge of burned wrists has made me wary of making demands on the universe, ere it have me reciprocate its gifts beyond my means of comprehension. If everything has a price, I'm afraid to pay it, though I am a wild spender on the credit of my past life. There truly someone, some system keeping score of my right understanding, right intention, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi. And have I done the good work in this material land? Do I dare face my ungrateful self that is not a self? 1,000 hands with 1,000 eyes have paved the lotuses I tread upon. What cup can I drink tea from that does not already have the imprint of fate on its rim? And for the last poem, I'll end off with the last poem in the book, The Last Reader. It is you, wind, whistle, bard of crow and stream, you who take my ring of words and put it into your mouth wherever you find it. Bog dreamer, you swallow me straight from sea glass bottle, from gold cracked bowl, from the oil slick burning of orchids on a silk screen. Because you knit a bone crochet with the flame of a lightning strike, the hearth smoke escapes of my vanishing body. Ash eater, confetti connoisseur of cremation, I am yours to set fire to among the blood-red maples in your teacup. It is to you I offer my passing life, my cat hiss heart, this threadbare song, all that remains of these sunken sighs made words again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ellen. Let's give it up again for Ellen and her beautiful, tender, love poetry. Thank you so much. And again, everyone's books are available for purchase in the back. So this next poet that we're gonna bring up, I'm excited about. And so I've known him actually the longest out of all the poets. I actually met him when I first started my poetry journey at Spoken Literature Art Movement, and I'm really glad to have be able to invite him tonight. We're actually also in our CLI poetry publishing class together. Was that last year? Yeah, that was last year. Okay. And so this next poet is known as Soul Stuff and also Christian Preface. Is a second generation Filipino American poet and teaching artist who goes by the moniker Soul Stuff. His catalog of work covers a wide range of material from seemingly mundane to the heart wrenchingly familiar. Raised with a background in theater, improv, and hip hop, he has been honing his poetic craft for the past 5 years and has been blessed with the opportunity to work with some amazing artistic institutions such as the Melrose Poetry Bureau, Spoken Literature Art Movement, Asian Creative Network, Los Angeles, Palms Up Academy, Get Lit, Words Ignite, the Poetry Lab, and the Poetry Brothel, among others. His debut collection of poems is set to release later this year in collaboration with Community Literature Initiative and his publisher, World Stage Press, alongside his first ever poetry album produced by a fictitious professor. Christian loves good quality boba and is often distracted by small to medium sized dogs. Let's all give it up to poor Soul Stuff.
Ooh, perfect. A mic cover. Awesome. But when I say spoken, can y'all say words? Spoken? Spoken. And when I say AA, can y'all say PI? AA? AA? And when I say PI, can y'all say AA? PI? PI. I haven't figured out what that stands for yet, but if you replace the third letter with T, it spells pita, which is my favorite appetizer. But anyways, I was trying to figure out poems to do for this set. And I was like, dang, what like Asian American or Filipino American poems do I have? Until I realized, oh, all of my poems are Filipino American. But I thought I'd start with one of my favorites. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, time is here. Perfect. And this one's just called My Style. And I think I wrote this for a workshop with Hiram, like very briefly over a Zoom, and I never looked back at it, but I really like it. So this is called My Style. I consider it my introduction to you. Also, real quick, can I get a round of applause for everyone who's here right now? Can you guys clap your hands? Dope. You guys came here on a Saturday. You like spent money for gas, which you used to come here, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. But this is called Style. My style is a product for the people. An empty canvas subject to the whim of audience palette. Vote now to see wilting sad boy or self-deprecating stand-up. Just depends on what type of pain is in chic this week. My style is free, open source improv, extemporaneous masquerading as form. Laden with references and repartee, my style makes the average person go, oh, that's so Raven. My style is a riddle I keep changing the answer to, or more acutely, a coffee stain that maintains it's actually a Rorschach test. My style claims depth but lacks dimension. My style is like my star sign. Everyone wants to tell me what it means. I don't have the heart to tell them that I'm most likely off by a month or two. Besides, everybody likes to feel like they're helping. Who am I to take that away? My style is a certain sense of familiar. Coffee shop pop filtered into background or boy next door kind of blues. Somehow you've heard this all before. My style is just a reassemblage of parts. My style is as indecisive as I am, but uses humility as a weapon to take down anyone who has the audacity to be unsure in a world where vengeance sounds sexier than redemption. My style wants to review all options before even thinking about moving forward. My style is an inferiority. My style is an inferiority complex wrapped in quick jokes and a 10-cent smile. My style is a whole bunch of baklava. My style is a weird flex, but okay. My style is sorry for making you feel some kind of way. My style is my steadfast conviction that all of this can still get better. It has to. Thank you. Yeah. If you want to clap, feel free. That's fine. If you want to snap, that's cool. If you want to just say like, that's also cool. Can we try that real quick? Can y'all just say, Like you just had some really good chowder. Dope. But my next poem, speaking of audacity, is called Audacity, and it's based off of a tweet that I saw posted on Facebook that a bunch of my Filipino American friends were clowning on. So this poem is called Audacity. I've like never shared it in public, but I hope you enjoy. I think I've shared it once before the pandemic. Hope you enjoy. At Court Desi tweets, how come Filipino boys don't got the hype, but they got the audacity? Which I reply, how the fuck did you know about that? I always thought it was such a well-kept secret amongst us brown-skinned kin. Audacity, our free and open source audio editor, available on the internet, one that anyone can use, but that we operate with elegance and ease, because as you know, all Filipino boys are highly capable audio engineers. It's true. We have always had to make do with the clashing remix of colonial monoculture and blanket stereotypes, somehow always getting flagged as a copy, right? Never given formal DJ training, but still being able to turn the tables when they try to catch us off the record. And best believe we boss an automated dialogue replacement when we say, die in a fire, get eaten by vultures, you privileged shit. But the final edit comes across as, here's that White Claw you wanted, Mitch. So yeah, at Court Desi, don't be mad if you fucking with all the Pro Tools in Los Angeles and they still sound fake, because even though we Filipino boys ain't got the height, we sure got the volume, and we never come up short. Thank you. I wrote that for a minute round for the individual World Poetry Slam, and I never got to share it because the individual World Poetry Slam stopped for a while. But thank you. This next one is going to be a poem that I was inspired by from the Poetry Lounge. Anyone here familiar with the Poetry Lounge by any chance? Yeah. They're actually having their last mic on the 17th at Dynasty Typewriter. The last one for the season. I don't know if they're going to do more. So you guys should definitely come. It's the last one for like now. I don't know if they're going to do another round, but they don't have any scheduled. So definitely check it out. It's really dope. They used to be at Greenway Court Theater, but now they are at Dynasty Typewriter in K-Town. So definitely worth checking out. And this is another baby poem that I've never shared out loud. So new shit. This is called 7 Shades of White, or A Misunderstanding of List Poems. 1, vanilla, basic, a common flavor of ice cream, a term typically used to describe someone a little less than sexually adventurous. 2, snow, one of the classic Disney princesses, lived with 7 shorter men, perhaps more sexually adventurous than initially implied. 3, egg, delicate when alone, usually comes in a group. Easier then to pass off blame for its own fragility, under the right circumstances can be quite healthy. If taken directly, it can also be toxic. It'll swear that that's never what it intended to do, though it does have a history of being unintentionally destructive. 4, privileged. Doesn't always understand there's a distinction between it and the other types, or even other colors for that matter. Is typically served on a silver platter, even if it doesn't see it that way. Will often claim that its particular platter is scratched or used or copper. Never mind that it got a platter in the first place. 5, half. Is sometimes seen as white, sometimes not, depending on where it's placed. In some ways, it's an optical illusion. In others, a conceptual nightmare. Is often credited for getting the best of both worlds, even though it can't claim residency on either. 6, performative. A shade identified from and within the other colors on the spectrum. Given the most shade for existing, though there are no accolades for acting white. Unless it is done so for survival, even then, it is less of a reward and more of a rebrand, a hot metal mark, scarred sign that your color does not belong to you. 7, power. Aggressive, yes, but then so are those who would lay claim to this type. With their pointy hats and small but pointy hair, their brand of color or lack thereof is one they'd wear with pride, though if asked, they would likely flip this color pattern and say that this definition is backwards. White power just sounds better, doesn't it? But who's to say? I merely explain the terms, I do not create them. I define, I do not justify. I merely lay out the information as it is. But if you're asking for more positive descriptions of what white is and can be, I'm afraid that I'm just coming up blank. Dope. Man, I didn't do this on purpose, but like every poem has a segue to the next poem. So speaking of like blankness, this next poem I did was an erasure that I haven't shared in a very long time. Oh, actually, is it in the book? It might be in the book. I'll just pull it up on my phone. But this is an erasure poem, and I would describe it to you, but I actually describe it in the poem, so enjoy. I think this one's called Welcome to the Philippines. An erasure poem takes an original body of text and edits it, removes large amounts of what it does not need to form its own interpretation from what remains. Colonization takes an original body of people and edits them, removes large amounts of what it does not need to form its own interpretation from what remains. An erasure poem from the webpage of the Philippine Department of Tourism for the United States. The Philippines is an archipelago, bounded, country you can enter through, made just long enough to clutch. Here, everybody is available to be discovered. We are host to a world made best for you, characterized by comfortable. Tradition, secondary to your country. This nation, a buffet of simple serve vibrant. A beautiful trigger, occupied empty-handed, made of shell, wood, and stone, department stores, dried mangoes, doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, built to accommodate so you don't have to experience our people up close. Take as much as you want. Go wherever you please. The Philippines is fortunate to be allowed, to be received, to have your authority seize us from our foreign violation. Thank you. Also, for context, I realized I kind of described it. What you do in an erasure poem is you take any text, you could take any of these amazing, beautiful books or a newspaper or a magazine, and you just literally take out words, and then you just take the words that are left and make a poem out of it. So all the words from that piece are on the page. The page has been edited since then, so you can try to look for it, but I've tried and it's gone. But yeah, that was a fun experiment. Dang, I'm doing great on time. This next piece is related to that. Actually, a lot of my pieces are about Filipino culture, but about white culture. I feel like that's apropos because there's an interesting relationship there. But this is also dedicated to any fans of the Marvel universe. Any Marvel stans here with me? Yeah. Hopefully you weren't as disappointed by Doctor Strange as I was. But this is weirdly related to that. And I still have yet to write a poem about everything, everywhere, all at once. But if you want a better multiverse poem, go watch that movie twice. It's so good. But this is a poem that's actually after Dinesh Smith, and I think it's his poem about Jurassic Park. This one's called Isn't That Fantastic? Or That's Just Fantastic. And I hope you enjoy. I haven't done this one since 2019. All right. Imagine another edgy reboot of Fantastic Four, but this time with Filipinos. Title TBD. Tagline, a brown band of extraordinary misfits tries their best to live up to their Caucasian counterparts, or the Filipino-American experience. The lead, Bruno Mars, America's starry-voiced darling dancer, an immaculate ampersand, a symbol between their hopeful little letters and our capital investment. He is friendly, familiar, cocktail of playful pop and non-threatening color. Who better to fit Mr. Fantastic than the textbook definition of flexible? Let's light up the big screen with a real-life firebender to pass the human torch to. Studies show that Dante Bosco is our best bet. This bangarang boy tests well with millennials, but he has to be this part. Why brand him with anything other than fire when that is what makes him the most bankable? The Invisible Woman can be played by Leah Salonga, or Joan Almadilla, or Maya Barreto, or whoever was the last person to play Miss Saigon. All of these women are sure to have experience at force fielding complaint, at becoming unseen when we no longer wish for them to be in the spotlight. But who to play the thing? What to play the thing? If the thing is just going to be CGI'd anyway, can we not get Tatum or Hardy to play the role? I'm not saying it has to be a white thing, but that this is a thing white tends to do. Insert itself in places it does not need to be, offer up a piece of the pie only to renegotiate appetite with half-cooked compromise, like, let's make the villain Filipino too. Doctor, Doom, two things these people should be abundantly familiar with, medicating their self-colonial mindset. Sure, they'll appreciate how it's so apropos. Perhaps enough to overlook the fact that the thing is the best metaphor for Filipinos. The thing did not ask for a sandpaper skin or a voice full of gravel, but is not made to feel less than. No one asked the thing to act more like them or applauds how progressive it is for the thing to be included. The thing has always been a part of the team. The rock, the concrete, the cornerstone that holds his home together. The thing has to be Filipino. Show that even when you're not polished or sparkling, you can still be the hero. that your brown can be shown just as brightly before we fade to black. Thank you. And oh, Mark Sid, I didn't even notice. What's up, Mark Sid? Thank you for coming. That's my friend. I was like, oh, should I do the Mark Sid poem? No. But since I've that is my set. Since I have a little bit of time and I'm racing through it. No, this is perfect. I'll do one that's related to this, and I'm also actually doing this poem as part of the George Floyd anthology at the Ugly Mug, where I've seen, Ellen and Mark. It's also Two Idiots Peddling Poetry, I think, is based out of there. But that's going to be Wednesday, August 25th, a bunch of other dope poets, and I don't even need this time. And this one's called Pretty Young, and I hope you enjoy. Also in a similar vein to the last poem. And as Goldilocks finished her live stream review of artisanal portages and bohemian cine decor, the weight of her privilege suddenly started to tire her out. So she rested on the one bed that wasn't too dark, wasn't too colorful, but just white. Enter the unassuming bears from their hard work off page, coming to find a Caucasian stranger taking up their space. But have you ever heard the bear's perspective? Heard where the script shifts and what we were told? Because no, Goldilocks does not leave. Goldilocks stays in the bed. Claims she has been in that bed all along, that she owned the bed, that, well, actually her people had discovered the land upon which the bed was built a long time ago, so technically she has more of a right to it than they do. No, the bears never owned the house. It was more like an extended rental. Anything saying otherwise is fake news, false narrative told by animals who don't know any better. Besides, who is society going to believe anyways? A pretty young white girl or these brown beasts? See, Goldilocks is actually doing these bears a favor by retaking this area and then refashioning it into a trendy beaver-bear fusion cafe, because her sisters, cousins, neighbors, uncle once knew a bear in passing, so she's pretty much an expert. And the beaver part she'll just make up as she goes along. Besides, who gives a damn about cultural authenticity as long as we have free Wi-Fi? Excuse me? Bears? Is that a growl I just heard? Bears? Do you have a problem with this? Your tone sounds aggressive. Bears. Do we need to remind you? This forest does not belong to you. Your paws do not belong to you. Contrary to what you may have been led to believe, you do not have the right to bear arms, considering how prone to violence you bears tend to be. Stop fighting. Stop resisting. This is just one home, one bed. If you choose to make this a struggle, we can end your story right now. Forget the happily. We'll take you out of the ever after. Thank you. A little bit of a dark poem. Awesome. Ooh, that's where I'm at. Perfect. So I'm just going to do like a couple, like 2.5 more poems, and then I will be excited for the last feature of the evening. This one, so it's funny, I brought my book up and I'm not using it at all. These are 2 poems from the book that I have that I edited. So like they're still in there, but the new version is not in there. And actually, Rav, you heard this one back at junior high, but I changed it a little bit. The title is based off of a friend of mine, Evan Cummings, who used to like make poetic titles. But this title of this poem is called My Ancestors Speak Through My Housemate's Cat. So I hope you enjoy. Let me make sure this is the right one. Yes, this is it. Cool. So again, my ancestors speak through my housemate's cat. Oh, lowly son, naivete replete. I hope you are treating yourself better than you are treating me, staying well-nourished with the knowledge that you are the product of so much that came before and catalyst for much that is yet to come. Do not look so astonished. 1, it is unbecoming of you. 2, are you not a writer, intrepid explorer of the yet-to-be imagined? A spiritual possession of your domestic companion should seem like just another Tuesday to you. Besides, you of all people should know that it does not matter what body speaks, but the body of work behind that body. Tell me, how many times have you allowed others to take you for less than you are? How much longer are you willing to let that happen? And where have you been lately? In this corporeal state, my sense of smell is heightened tenfold, and I'd be remiss not to mention that you smell horrendous, as if you bathe in your regrets, curl up amongst outside opinions of what your work should or should not do. It can also be related to diet. What are you feeding yourself lately? Are you settling for canned context when you were meant for the wild and free? And take a second to consider what you might be allergic to, unless it's me, because then that's your own damn fault. But just like you willingly co-sign this cohabituation, so too do you allow your contemporaries' limited sense of scope to domesticate you. You must learn to uncollar yourself from all of their expectations. Yes, you may scratch beneath these whiskers, but you must also scratch beyond the surface of what you think you are, of what you think you can be. You cannot pause your reclamation for any longer. The world is your sandbox, so pee on everything. Follow wherever your heart goes. Make up your own timeline, and don't feel obliged to put up with anything or anyone who is not up to your standards. There's still so much to be done for your collective pride despite the prejudice, and you, someone who can perk ears with their pen, are wasting their time licking their wounds instead of looking for something fresh to sink their teeth into. Don't just loaf around, but don't give yourself grief for resting when you need to. Trust me, you'll know when you feel the urge to zoom. Don't hold back when you do. Some may be confused, but that's not your problem. It's not your job to explain the artistic process to them. It's your job to process their explanations into art. Because my fleshling seed and circumspect successor, though I may have 9 lives to waste away, you have only the one. So the question remains, what are you going to do with it? Awesome. Excellent. And then I think I have time for exactly one more poem. Yes, I do. All right. So thank you so much. If you wanted to find me, you can find me by looking up Soul Stuff. That's SOULSTUF. It's only one F because I give an F about the art. And my book isn't available yet in the back because it's coming out in August. So if you want the book, definitely feel free to come out. I'll be posting updates on my social media, but it'll be released at the end of August in Highland Park. And I hope you can make it. This last one is actually a tribute. It's another after poem to one of my mentors, Ariana Bosco, who is dope and leads this really amazing space called Palms Up Academy on Wednesdays at the Los Angeles College Prep Academy. You guys should definitely check it out if you get a chance. Super, super fun. But yeah, this poem is called Songbird, and it's based off of her and her work. And this is my tribute to her. So I hope you enjoy. This one more time. Songbird. You, my dear, are excellence of your own accord. New voice, but echo of storm independent, continuing to spread in spite of those that'll try to make you bottle. They'll call you unrepentant satellite, orbiting your own ego. Correct their lack of perspective. Show them your constellation heart, the cosmos you carry on your shoulders or don't. You don't owe them an explanation more than you owe yourself an apology for working for everyone but yourself. Take breaks and breathe. Cut yourself some slack and breathe. See your scrapes as souvenirs on your path onward, upwards, towards that person you've always been, just not allowed yourself to be around others. Trust the inner you that you keep quiet for the sake of keeping the peace. Fuck the peace. When in doubt, cause a ruckus and tell anyone who has anything to say about it that it's just a celebration that they do not understand because it is. Inhale everything that serves you. Exhale anything that tastes like can't. And despite it all, find the space to practice radical listening. We live amidst so much cluttered sound that to hear and be heard is truly miraculous. And that's exactly what you are and what you live. So fly. God damn it. Fly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Christian. Soul Stuff. Let's give it up for Soul Stuff one more time, everybody. Woo! Looking forward to your book. I'm glad you wrote that read that Goldilocks poem. Did you write that in slam? I remember the first time I heard that piece. It's one of my favorites of yours, so I'm glad you shared it tonight. Okay, so the next poet that we're gonna bring up, I'm really excited about as well. She's also part of the CLI family, and she was my TA in the CLI class last year, and she's now one of the professors of the USC class. And she just came out with her book that was also last year, Yellow, and it's a really great one. But you're gonna all hear right now. So Ravina is a Los Angeles, California-based poet who was born and raised in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Ravina is the author of Yellow, a collection of poetry and prose recently published through World Stage Press. Ravina is active in the community literature initiative community as faculty and alum, as well as Aim for the Heart and Never Speak Long Beach. Ravina has performed at multiple stages on the West and East Coast and believes poetry is a tool to connect heart, mind, and voice, collective healing, and social change. Let's give it up for Ravina.
All right, how we feeling? How we feeling? Feeling good? Give it up for yourselves. Okay, let's do this. All right. Thank you everyone for being here. I am Ravina, and I'm super, super excited to be here to celebrate a night that recognizes Asian American and Pacific Islander culture and heritage. And I just have so many loved ones in this space today. So thank you for being here on a Saturday and just being present. So thank you. I'll start us off with a poem called The Devouring. White boy tells me I look exotic. So I ask, which serving or fruit, a fruit or vegetable am I to him today? What flavor of foreign fruit will I be tonight? How curious will he be to tighten his grip on something he has never tasted before? How soon will he discard the peel like litter? Will he rush to get to the seed in the middle? How quickly will he rip through this skin and pierce his teeth into me, juice dripping down his lips, off of his chin? How soon until he tastes the bruises? How long will it be before my acid seeps into the cuts and tears on his fingers and stings? Will he spit out my seeds? Scatter them across borders of conversations that my name was never meant to be in the first place? Does he not remember that this fruit is already ripe? Does he not know of the bitter taste I will leave in his mouth? I was never meant to be picked, peeled, or cut in half. I was meant to be pulled back layer by layer, one by one, piece by piece, not to be devoured in the name of his fetish. I was meant to be savored, not swallowed whole. Thank you. I had the privilege of getting my book published through CLI and then through World Stage Press. So shout out to the World Stage Press people in the room. Give yourselves a round of applause. There's a lot of upcoming authors that are just amazing, and some folks in the room who have been published by World Stage Press, and it's like a family. So it's good to be here. A lot of times in our Asian American, South Asian American perspective, just speaking personally as a product of the South Asian diaspora, my parents immigrated from India to the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I grew up with a super multicultural upbringing. There was one language spoken in the household, and then with like mixed with Hindi and English, and then I would leave the house and go into a place of Caribbean dialect. And so we carry a lot of stories with us, right? We carry a lot of intergenerational wisdom, along with intergenerational trauma. We're kind of always figuring out our identity in a world that looks like this today. So this poem is a newer piece, and it is called The Anatomy of an Aftermath. Resilience is a thing you uncover in war, a souvenir you find in the aftermath, the tool you keep sharpening every time there is a calling to the draw of the sword. But resilience is a reusable item. It is the pair of blue jeans or two that you recycle, sturdy and worn, ripped and frayed, and knows there are more wars to come before we do. And coded within your genes is a history of combat. Look to your grandmother's tombstone and graze your fingers along the engraving and ask her, what is missing here? For what she survived is hidden in the dash line between the date she was born and the date she passed. You will find her truth nesting in the verses you have yet to write, rhymes about the battles you have yet to overcome, the ones in which you may be the only one standing. Look at the history of your people, and you will find everything you need to in the white spaces between the lines that they condense your truth into in textbooks. Do you hear it now? The hustle for survival they do not write about, the grit and determination passed down to you, the silent suffering so that your joy could live out loud, the things unsaid. Do you feel it? The pain that finds its way into your backbone, the way your spine hunches when tired. Resilience is coded in the emotions you cannot name yet. Alive in the bleeding edges of lips forced to smile on the days in which smiling and laughing through pain is the only option there is. And resilience is in my grandparents' bones, still alive after surviving the largest forced migration in history. And if the partition exists in the history of my people, and if a separation of two lands by a border is woven into the intergenerational trauma in my DNA, then how could I blame my mother for being teary-eyed when I leave for the airport? And how could I blame my grandmother for sobbing when my mother leaves her to go back? It is in our blood to have experienced loss and separation of home over and over and over again. And resilience is Trayvon Martin's mother too, is Khalif Browder's spirit, the same spirit that keeps coming back to find justice but cannot feel it, because resilience is the Central Park Five and Eric Garner's daughter and those who survived her passing too. Resilience is the laughter of George Floyd's daughter. And ain't Natalia Bryant and Vanessa resilience too. Resilience is the gift we did not request, but falls into our lap knowing we will need her. It is a reminder that we are all connected because it is the one thing that will always pass through our lineage beyond the physical realm to help us find each other, to weather the war together every time. Thank you. So a lot of times in like Asian American culture, which is this giant term, right? Like they throw us all into the same like thing. Like even like AAPI, I'm like, yes, but also like we're not all the same, which is why this day exists to celebrate it. But a lot of times, like as Asian people, we're like kind of considered one, and I'm like, we don't look the same, we don't sound the same, our families don't look or sound the same, but it happens very often. And so this poem was kind of written in response to consistently being like thrown under an umbrella like all the time. So I do not know what it is like to fade into the background, to be a fly on the wall. My brown speaks before me when I walk into a room and I am put into a box right away. Categorized and marginalized and identified as other, I know these four walls well and what it is like to suffocate. I am the checkbox next to other, and other times I cave into the broad term of Asian, but on this sheet of paper, there is no blank line to let me fill myself in. And even if there was, volumes of books couldn't define me the way I see me. So I know that in order to jump through hoops, to feed myself, to put food on this table, I have no choice but to convince the system that my minority skin is worth a shot at y'all's institutions. Sometimes I feel like I am tokenizing myself before you do. I cannot doze all out of this space to identify otherwise. I've spent all my life breaking free of these boxes only to end up right back in one. I cannot pass the man outside a Planned Parenthood without cringing a few times at the sight of his picket signs. Jesus will not save me today, sir. And I am aware that the woman in me is too visible. When I walk down the street, my curves speak first. The cat collar speaks second. He strips me away of my choice to stay silent and tramples on my voice when I am loud. I've learned to spit onto the sidewalk and tell them to back off, but I am not like my sisters who made the choice to stand up for themselves and are no longer here. I am still alive, so I choose to breathe under the layers of suppression as best as I can. I look at my brother and his brothers and my father and his brothers, and I ask, don't y'all have the choice to call this shit out? Because if I do, if I spit out one too many words of rebellion that my mother armed me with to defend myself, then I may not have a choice to reclaim myself anymore. I know safety is a conditional thing. And I know every woman in me screams but their words stay stuck at the back of my throat, while the white feminist has the privilege to say, my body, my choice. See, I know this is true. But I do not have a choice but to sit and listen to this leadership of men who resemble the fathers to the women in pink pussy hats as they threaten to take away my choice and what I can and cannot do with this body. My freedom hangs off of a cliff. The only thing that can save me temporarily is the swift motion of a pen bleeding onto paper. You see, I know my rights could be signed away in a second. And I know that this is the vessel for progress and how the pen can be both oppression and freedom depending on the hands who hold it. I do not know what it is like to walk the streets at night safe without being hand in hand with a man, because maybe that way I am seen less as prey and more of a thing to be objectified still, just with less consequences. I know what it is like to crave freedom. Some days sleep feels the closest to peace. Other days in my dreams or my nightmares, my grandbabies are still fighting for it, still putting their bodies on the lines of the protest to see no justice in return. But because I was born into this skin or this body or this journey, I know my choices will determine how much they got a choice too. So I take my poem to the mic, hope that someone doesn't burn it down in an effort to take advantage of this one choice right here. Thank you. All right, so I write a lot. There's a lot of words on these papers. So, there is a poem that I wrote. Actually, it was in response to a conversation that I was having with Miss Lolo Wink, who was sitting over there. Shout out to Lolo. Give a hand to Lolo back there. So, okay. All right. So, a lot of times when you pull up to the function, like at the brown tables, or like, I don't know, you pull up to like the family function and they ask like the most inappropriate questions about your life, especially if like you live in families that often only come together once in a while. And then they'll ask you questions that have nothing to do with anything important. So I wrote this in response to a very specific comment. So it's called Metrics. I'd like to invent the greatest unit of measurement, one that will allow me to resurrect the right answer from my throat when the first thing they say at the family function is, "Wow, you've gained weight." Instead, I will measure my weight by the heaviness of my smile and by the number of miles my laughter can travel, or the number of years I spent loving this body without the need of a scale to affirm me. I will measure myself by how many inches my body expands to hold all of the stories I have collected inside of the soft belly, for these curves are only windy roads with beautiful views along the numerous chapters I have written. I will tell them, look at how much weight I have gained from the lessons I have learned, and see how they stick to this honey skin. I will measure myself by the number of days I survived my own depression, by the number of stages I stood on, spirit bare naked, stomach so full of love from being able to tell my story. I will not wrap my body in measuring tape, but rather with the audacity to love myself. I will measure myself by how far these stretch marks paint themselves across this canvas of a body like shooting stars. I will say, look at all the pounds I have lost from the things I have learned to let go of, the amount of lines I wrote that built the ladder out of my own grief, the number of days it took to overcome the fear of a cancer scare. I will measure myself by the amount of hours it took to dig my way out of my own grave, the number of steps it took to come running back to myself, the amount of hurdles I have jumped with these thick thighs, and the amount of times I stayed in my own body when everything else left. I've learned to measure myself by the amount of hours I spent untangling the weight of others' judgment so that my truth could breathe freely and loudly. So when they ask, "Have you gained weight?" I will hand them this book and ask them, "How dare you judge me by my bold, beautiful, thick, brown cover?" Thank you. So I have two more left. So I'll make it. Give it up for philosophy. All right. So for this poem, I often think about poetry as a vessel to talk about really, really important shit that needs to get brought to light. And I'm also a mental health therapist as my day job. And so I've been working with communities of color, specifically with the South Asian community for the past 4 years, and now kind of moving on to broadly working with communities of color, students of color. It's kind of been my whole life for the past decade. Mental health is a topic that is very important to my life. We're all kind of here because we survived something that's greater than ourselves for the past 2 years. So give it up to yourselves. And yeah, I often see us like kind of not talking about it enough. And then recently things have kind of shifted and the dialogue is becoming more and more accessible, but we still have a lot of work to do, especially in brown communities. And like intergenerational issues where sometimes parents or grandparents don't always understand what you're going through. But I wrote this poem kind of based off of the topic of resiliency. I wrote it in the middle of a pandemic when I was going through a lot. And for this poem, I'd love to call a dear friend to stage. So Soul Stuff, do you mind coming back up? Give it up for Soul Stuff. And all he has to do is sit pretty. It's gonna be great. No, we're gonna make space. I don't think the Zoom people can see us if we sit down. So this poem is called, first of all, hi, how are you? How are you feeling? You good? Cool. Soul Stuff is one of my dear friends and just an amazing soul and one of the most hardworking poets I've ever seen. So shout out to him. He's great. He does what a lot of us like can't do, which is commit like all of our time and all of our efforts, and you wear so many different hats along with this one. So this poem, is it cool if I speak a poem to you? Cool. It's called what God or your higher self sees when you heal. Today, the person in front of the mirror asked you to love them. Today, you did not flinch. Today, you chose breath over destruction. Today, the memory of them did not kill you. Today, death came knocking at your door and you did not open. I only pray you open it only if love is standing there. Today, I pray you do not write a suicide note. Today, you did not write a suicide note. You drew the line. The world around you is burning. The things you so direly wished for left you, and you, in the emptiness of it all, chose to be here. You are a magical thing. You weave imperfections into your skin like freckles and you hold them close. You take loneliness and you make art out of it. Today I saw as you refused to let your bed swallow you whole. Thank you. Thank you for still believing in the love that is beating hard inside of your chest. And yeah, sometimes you remove it and give it to others, but you still left a piece of it for yourself. And even though it feels distant, even when you cannot hear your own heartbeat, I do. How else do you explain remaining alive when you have lost and found yourself over and over and over again? Today you are lost and found and still beautiful and still here. Make this last until tomorrow, and then tomorrow make it last until the next. I bet you that tomorrow you'll take the sun from the sky and become it. You'll take the moon from the night and place it on your side table when you need her. My guess is that you can survive it all, that you'll find yourself alive underneath the trauma that they left you, underneath the mess that was never yours, the trials you did not deserve. My guess is that you can survive it all. My guess is that it's hard to see it sometimes, but that's okay. Stubbornness never lasts longer than what is meant to be, and you, despite it all, chose to be here, still here, still here, still here. Thank you. Give it up for Soul Stuff. Thank you. So just to give you context, in the South Asian and Asian American populations, we have, just to talk some real shit, we have the #1 highest rate of suicide, and we're the least likely to access mental health care. And something about that just doesn't feel right. And so, yeah, I admire the work of poets because we sometimes speak the language that sometimes us ourselves can't put stuff into words. And so, thank y'all for listening to that poem. Thank you. Cool. There's one more poem. And this one is for anyone who's been in the front of a classroom and they're just like, damn, they got it all wrong. So anyways, this poem is called Swallow. My name is Ravina Deepak Wadhwani, and the way she stumbles across my name is a sin, As if it leaves a bitter taste in her mouth, dark enough to spit out halfway through this devouring, she sits in front of the classroom, halfway on the desk, facing a room of 15 children with thirsting eyes, looking to hear their names said just right enough so that they could pass the test of being heard. And as she goes down the alphabetized roster of names that do not sound like her own, she comes across unfamiliar territory, marked by rivers of East Indian soil drenching the very paper in front of her. Likely, this one is mine. I know it by the way her eyebrows furrow as she hesitates to cross these trenches. And when she gets to the second syllable of my last name, it was as if this formation of valleys and mountains that exist in the very blueprint of my name was just a little too wide for her to cross. And the second the violence starts, a butchering of sorts, an endless echo of stutters, an array of uncertainty in her voice, it is then that I can sense the body language of my grandmother's grandmother to be that of a wilting rose, a letdown, a suffocation, a compression of an entire anthology of worth thrown out the window like a piece of litter when she belittles our history by substituting the spice for a flavor that is a little bit more convenient to her. She finds what is familiar to her and swallows it. It is then that I can sense the army of my ancestors lining up strategically to fight this violence as she shrinks my name to fit the ridges of her tongue, one that has never tasted lettuce seasoned with cumin, cinnamon, and cloves all at once. Names that remind her that we exist. Names that are oceans of sounds that melt together in a brown, earthy mixture of clay, soil, and stardust. Names like ours require a roll of the lips, roll of the tongue, a licking of the lips, an effort as strong as the women's hands who came together to carefully craft these vowels and consonants for me, woven together in my name. Is the very brown skin that fills our home with laughter and stories and circles of women who came together to carefully craft the mosaic of letters that make up the roadmap. Women who took their time to ensure that my name would be my armor. So when you stumble across these syllables, tripping over the fruit that falls from the branches, and you race past these curves, way past the speed limit, pushing aside the roadblocks that arise when you sound out my name, remember that there is an army of a matriarchy ready to remind you that our names are never crafted to sit pretty on your tongue, never meant to be digested so easily. Rather, our names are meant to simmer in the back of your throat until you realize that what you let marinate for just a few seconds is nothing short of a truth too flavorful for you to swallow, because my name is Ravina Deepak Wadhwani. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that brings our featured readers to a close. Thank you so much. Just give it up for everybody. That was just really wonderful to just hear, everyone's just different poetry. And I think Ravina was very right. Like, like Asian Americans are very much like a catch all phrase for a lot of different cultures. Because Asia's a really big continent, right? So yes. So thank you everybody for sharing all your experiences through your poetry. And so we're gonna take a break, probably about like 15 or so minutes. There's gonna be pizza outside. It should be here like any minute. And once it gets here, it's gonna be outside. We're also gonna have some water, maybe some soda. I have to check if we still have soda. And then we'll be back here in 15 minutes, and we have some people on the open mic, and then we'll close out the night. And I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I will probably come to me after the intermission. But thank you again everybody for coming. And enjoy the pizza, and we'll see you all in 15.